The UN Security Council held an emergency meeting following the US strikes on Iran. The Secretary-General of the UN, Antonio Guterres, quick to criticise the strikes, posting on X on Sunday that he was gravely alarmed by the use of force from the United States. He claimed it posed a direct threat to international peace and security. Joining me now to discuss this and more, former Prime Minister Tony Abbott. Well, Tony, we'll start there with a broad question if I can. Why was this US action necessary?
Well, as usual, the UN has got it wrong. It is Iranian nuclear weapons, potential Iranian nuclear weapons, that are the threat to world peace. And thank God for Israel. Thank God for the United States. Donald Trump has done what many of his predecessors have talked about but never acted upon. He has taken decisive action to ensure that Iran never, ever gets a nuclear weapon, and frankly, the world will be a much safer place without Iranian nuclear weapons.
Yeah, I think we spoke over the weekend. I feared that the president would go the way of his predecessors and, talk tough, as they have, going all the way back to Clinton, about the nuclear ambitions of Iran and do nothing, and particularly when he gave them that 2-week window. But that's not what's happened. And I want to make particular mention, I think Israel really forced the United States' hand. I mean, it went in bravely for a week and took out a lot of the air defence systems. And America went in and finished the job. And the Israelis tonight in Tel Aviv, they're in their bomb shelters. They're bearing the brunt of this. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, look, I was apprehensive like you, Peter, but it seems that President Trump apprehends that the apocalyptic Islamist dictatorship in Tehran, dealing with them is not like doing a New York property deal. You cannot do deals with apocalyptic dictators. You cannot do deals with people who are hell-bent on your destruction. I think the president has appreciated that, and good on him and good on his administration for doing what's necessary and acting so powerfully to secure peace through strength and to support their brave ally Israel.
I think what a lot of people won't realise too, Tony, is Shia Iran is not just out to have a global caliphate and, send Christians to the lions and, all the other references we've heard for many, many years, but they also want to wipe out the other Sunni Muslim nations in the region. And of course, they'd privately, if not they can't say it publicly, they'd privately be pretty supportive of what's happened over the weekend, wouldn't they?
Absolutely. Look, the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, Egypt will all be quietly cheered by this. If Iran ever did get a nuclear weapon, and please God, this will now never, ever happen. And who knows, down the track, we might even get regime change, which would be wonderful. But if Iran did get a nuclear weapon, almost immediately, Saudi would go hell for leather to get one. The Turks would go hell for leather to get one. And the whole idea of nuclear non-proliferation would be dead in the most dangerous part of the world. So really what happened on the weekend is a big, big step towards a much safer world. And it's a sign that America under President Trump will not be trifled with. And this will very much be noticed in the other rogue capitals, particularly in Moscow and particularly in Beijing.
I've got to ask you, because I've been pretty critical tonight of the Prime Minister, who didn't call at NSC yesterday when this all broke. He says he was not warned, that Australia didn't have a heads up. I mean, does that surprise you? Because I know with you, when we were in the theatre in the Middle East, when we were involved, obviously, in Islamic State, Australia was involved and assets were involved. You had NSC meet day and night on weekends whenever it was required. I just think it's a shocking look that we didn't hear from our Prime Minister until today.
Look, what happened today was of a piece with what's been happening ever since 2022. Under this government, Australia has been in retreat from the wider world, and the most obvious sign of that was about 18 months ago when the Albanese government refused to send a frigate to the Red Sea. And this was the first time since the ANZUS Treaty in 1951 that Australia had turned down a specific request from America for military help. The other big problem is that under this government, it's almost as if there's this even-handedness in Canberra between the United States and China. And given that one is a democracy and our greatest ally, the other is a dictatorship which is bent on regional and ultimately global hegemony, I just think this is both wrong and strange.
All right, I'm going to play a bit of a treat for my viewers at home, because I know you've got a book, but what most people do not know is you've also got a wonderful documentary being filmed at the moment that will soon air on Sky News. Let's have a little look here as an exclusive.
I try to think of what it would have been like for the 1,500 souls on board the First Fleet coming into this harbour all those years ago. Apprehension, anticipation, relief. I don't think anyone can ever get tired of the harbour like this. I'm sure that being here would have excited, even in them, a feeling of hope.
Right, that's a sneak peek from the documentary, but let's talk about the book on which it will be based. It's a history book about Australia. This is a big endeavour, Tony Abbott. Why would you write a book, and why do you think it's so important that it be a book about the history of our nation?
Well, Peter, all too often over the last few decades, we've had the black armband view of Australia's history. Now, it's not all good, but gee whiz, there is so much more to be proud of than to be ashamed of. And having, I guess, been at the apex of our government, having seen so much of the Australian people up close and personal over my life, and particularly in my public life, I just think it's time for a better story to be told. And I certainly don't believe in standing by and seeing our country run down by people who should know better. And that's why this proud history should be told. And frankly, it should be much better known and much more appreciated.
Well, good on you, Tony Abbott. The book will come out, obviously, in a couple of months' time. The documentary, I think, is by the end of the year. We'll see it here on Sky News, but it's all out there now in the public domain. I know you've been working on it, slaving over it for many, many months, so I'm delighted we could talk about it tonight. Thanks for your time, Tony.